Come on, baby. Come on. Yes. All right. We are live. All righty. Chats. All right. Live right now. All about ignition, guys. Let's get in here. All right. Copy. Alrighty. Haha! First man in. What's up, Chris? Got your order. Got some more coils on the way. So definitely going to get into some meat and potatoes tonight. And what I mean by that is we're definitely going to get into some of the deeper information. Where is? There we go. Including, as I said earlier, hey, how do we have 2 people in? It says 1 person in the live. All right, 5. Looks like we got a good crowd. By the way, guys, real quick, I'll say it later. I'm doing okay. I'm doing good. Thank you very much, George. Appreciate it. I get a discount code for being first. Yeah, I wish it was that simple, man. So I do have the RV6 turbos on sale. I have 2 on hand, and I need to move some inventory around. Let me see something here. Loki, are you trying to get in the middle again? Let me clean this bad boy up. Oh, yeah. So I do have a whiteboard, and it's a beat up whiteboard, though. It's kind of like falling apart here, and I have to get a new one. I'll probably get one after I get off this live. But definitely want to kind of get a little bit into description here. Yeah. So sorry about last week, man. I just had so much going on mentally, physically. I couldn't make it, man. I just couldn't make it. I wasn't physically able to make it. I'll just say that. All right, and then we can kind of do this, and then just kind of we'll just call that the plug. That's good enough. And our little electrode. Yay, like my ghetto picture, plug, electrode, and we're just going to start, and I'll get to this, why I'm doing this in a minute, but not right now. But I definitely needed that whiteboard so I can demonstrate something that we do when it comes down to spark plugs. So how is everybody else? How is everybody else's health? Are you guys doing okay? You know? Quick question regarding spark. We don't need a tune for spark plug and ignition coil change. No, you do not. There's no reason to change that. That's simply, so here's one of the things I should kind of like get into. The only time you would need a retune is if you went way too hot in your spark plugs. And I'll explain heat in the spark plugs after we get a few more people in. I just want to get everybody in here. No. Yeah, you don't need to because of the gap. But I will explain there are advantages to hotter coils, which people even sit there and they say things like, oh, well, the stock K-series coils did 1,000 horsepower. Well, the only way you can do 1,000 horsepower on a stock K-series coil consistently is generally to overdrive them. And what I mean by that is put too much heat in it. And that I'm going to get into later, too, when it comes down to ignition coils. I'm even going to get into field collapse and how ignition coils actually work. You know, how the hell do you generate 50,000 volts out of a coil when you're only putting 12 volts in? So that's something that a lot of people don't understand. I gotta say, today the weather was nice. Definitely a plus, absolute plus. So let's start with the absolute basics. Um, some people do understand, don't understand, but just for those who don't understand, you know what? Oh, dude, you know what? I should really grab an ignition coil. Well, now, well, not for now, but I'll maybe do that later. Let me see which way is the easiest way to do this for the whiteboard. Probably because I'm a righty, have it on my left side. So let's just say, hey, don't dry out on me there. Let's just say we've got our horrible drawing here of my valve. And air goes in, the injector. Let me get this a little bit better. So, for those of you who don't actually know, I mean, this is like our ghetto version of my little drawing here. Let me try to tip this down. Basically, in a nutshell, for those who don't understand combustion engine, most of you guys do, but I'm going to do this anyway. The air comes rushing in, and as the piston comes down and then comes back up, it compresses all this air and fuel that gets injected in here. And the spark plug basically ignites it. Now, there's a couple reasons. There's one of the things, and I should really get into spark plug gap real quick. The reason that we shrink the gap on a really high horsepower is because air is not really like we think it is. We think of air as an empty space. Air is not empty space. Air has molecules, but you're not not pushing more air in, you're putting more molecules. Okay. So spark plug gap, it's hard for the actual spark to jump this gap because now there's something in the way. The spark doesn't want to go there. It wants to go somewhere else. So by shortening the gap, we make it easier for the spark to jump that gap. However, this is where we run into a problem that we need better coils. The reason we end up needing better coils is because now we shrunk the gap, but now it's not as hot because a tighter spark plug gap doesn't have as much heat. So you don't want to shrink them down to like 12 thousandths or something like that, because then the spark gets so weak that you just don't make any power. Here's another thing people don't know. The coil itself puts out quite a bit of power, but one of the reasons that we have such ridiculous, as far as output, this has a 5,000 ohm resistor built into these plugs. If they didn't, there would be so much EMP interference because of the way a coil works. And that's something really important that a lot of people don't understand. All an ignition coil is we have, just say we have our positive. Why is it not working on the side? Positive, right? And we have our negative connection, right? And all it is two sets of windings. We have a lot of wire just wound and wound and wound and wound and wound. And we charge this up electrically, except there's another winding right next to it inside the coil. Then it has a little output, right? And then we have our spark plug boot, and then we have the top of our spark plug right here. So, although that's my horrible drawing, but these coils, what happens is the first coil charges to about 300 volts. Then the second, what happens is it's actually charging, and then we cut the charge. We disconnect it. When we disconnect it, this charge has nowhere to go. So because this charge has nowhere to go, it's an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, essentially, in a way, and it collapses onto itself. And then, because we have a secondary winding, it collapses into the secondary winding. When it collapses into the secondary winding, it jumps from 300 volts to about 40 or 50,000 volts. And then, because we go through a resistor to stop the electromagnetic pulse from jumping through the rest of the electronics in the car, it goes down to about 35,000 volts. So why do you need a hotter coil? Well, we need a hotter coil because we have a whole lot of combustion. And remember, when I went back to the more air and fuel you stuff in here, the harder it is for the actual spark to jump the gap, because it's literally as if you're putting something in the way of the gap. So while that's complicated, it's almost, with high combustion is almost like doing this, like putting a piece of paper between the gap of a spark plug. So that is where, can I return things on your website? That depends on what you bought and what you're doing with it. If you put like injectors in a car, and then take them back out, no, we can't return them. Things need to be in their original packaging so I can verify that they were not installed already. So that's kind of like just how Spark works. Okay, well, how am I? It's okay. You did not put them on your car, but I believe I went through emails on this, and I believe this is the same person. If this is you, the same person, I asked you and you just completely ignored my response 3 times. So I can't verify. If you open up fuel lines, how am I supposed to verify that you didn't put them on the car? I mean, if they come back and they're all messed up, what am I supposed to do? Send them back, and but if they smell like fuel, I can't accept the return. So, all right, back to what we were talking about. So now, spark plugs and reading spark plugs. This is actually not that complicated. So for you guys that want to know how to read a spark plug, it's pretty simple to teach. This is probably one of the best things we can ever do, is read the spark plug. Let me see if I can get this on camera. Actually, it's not too bad. I don't know if I could just get it to focus. Let me try. Nope. All right. So a lot of you can see the spark plug, and a lot of people think that because this porcelain is white, that it's too lean. And that's not actually true, guys. Now, this is difficult to show on video, but if you were to look down inside of the plug, right? So if I take this light and I look down inside to the base of the plug, right? If you see a little black ring around that bottom on the inside, that's perfect. If you see a black ring climbing up the porcelain towards the top, that's too rich. So I just told you guys how to tune your air-fuel ratio. Literally just taught you how to tune your air-fuel ratio. I personally, you always have to do it with a new set of plugs. Always have to do it with a new set of plugs. If you're going to do a tuning and you don't know what air-fuel ratio works on a car, put a new set of plugs in, do a hit. Okay, let me check my plugs. Do I have a black ring down there? Do I have more? Did it climb all the way up the porcelain? Well, now you know, because each fuel, as I've explained before, is different. So you might run a 12.1, or you might run 12.6, might run 12.8. Very hard to say depending on the fuel in the car. Some of the BMWs I know like a 13.2 before they're happy, which is nuts to me. The other thing to read, and I don't think we're not going to be able to see this, but you'll put up a plug and you'll see this one's old, but this one had very little timing in it. Let me see if I can. Oh, I hate this that I can't get this. All right, you can see the reflection, and then the reflection kind of goes away, but you can kind of see the reflection is more towards the top part of the strap. So it stops right about there. There is not a lot of ignition timing in this car in general. If you start to see that color line go down towards this part of the strap, there's too much ignition timing. That basically is your answer on how much ignition timing do I run. Now, here's where we can get into a little bit of problem in the heat ranges of a plug. What is a plug? What is a plug heat range? Well, a plug heat range, a colder plug, this porcelain will be thicker. And what that does, now that does not change the heat of the spark. See, that's a misconception. So having a hotter coil and a colder plug does not mean a colder spark. The heat of the plug, the reason they call it heat range is the plug gets to a certain temperature and it self-cleans. If it's too cold, it won't self-clean. It'll just foul out. If it's too hot, you'll get an extremely white plug, and it might even move the timing strap mark because your air fuel ratio needs to be right first. If it's too lean, it'll pull it down. So back to the heat. If it's too hot, it'll pre-ignite. Well, what does that mean, pre-ignite? Well, before your spark gets off, rather than the actual ignition happening, you might end up igniting somewhere else on the plug. You might end up, the strap might be so hot that, or another part of the plug might be so hot, it might ignite over here first, right? Instead of the actual ignition event when you want it, it'll ignite earlier, and then you'll have the spark. Now, here's the thing, guys. This doesn't always show up. It does not always show up in knock. Sorry, it does not always show up in knock. So knock retard doesn't always give you a good value. Turbo plus turbo compression plus glowing plug. Yeah, well, diesel's different. So I can get into diesel in a minute or two about that too, because diesels work off shear compression and injector timing. So, you're like saying dieseling. I'm sorry, you're right. I get what you're saying. My bad. Expressions. I'm terrible at expressions. So there you have as to why you can have pre-ignition, and if it ignites too early, because I'm not going to redraw the whole thing, but your piston is coming up and you have your combustion chamber, and we actually ignite early. That's because it takes time for the flame front to expand and then be able to push the piston down. But if you ignite one spot earlier and then ignite the plug later, it might burn and not show knock, but you'll lose horsepower. So a hotter plug, too hot, can make you lose horsepower. Also, an inferior plug that can't ignite as well can lose horsepower because the combustion event is slowed down. Now we have to add more timing than we needed before for the same combustion event to try to force that combustion event. So how does a hotter spark create better ignition? It's a cleaner burn because we're not trying to ignite it so early because our spark is so weak. So even if those guys who believe that adding spark doesn't do anything, they're wrong. The thing is, those are guys who have done it on 93 octane and 320 horsepower, and they put a set of coils on the car, and they expect to make ridiculous power out of an ignition coil when they kind of don't need it at that point. So, hey, what's up, Slows FK? What's up? My FK tune of Aston Martin D makes 589 wheel per horsepower on meth and 1700 cc. 1700 cc of meth has to be a relay. So, nice. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, man. I'm glad your car was great. So when it comes down to ignition, there's a lot more going on than most people think. They just think spark, boom, done. Hot air makes burn faster. That's not always true the case either. So the big advantage to spark plug gap. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, joking. Okay, got it. I'm sorry, man. It's a little difficult. Let's look at this at 5. Okay. Well, you can run 1700 cc with my methanol. It's my methanol / tier 3 cam cable. It is a cable that helps the ECU read the actual map sensor through a fuel input. So you can alter fuel by boost. So that's where now I just got totally lost as to what the heck I was talking about. Aston Martin D is tuned by Red Star. Well, hey, man, everybody, I'm not going to get into, there was a lot of things that individual has claimed, and I don't get into the mix of that stuff. I try really not to get in the middle of it. So when do you need better coils? Whenever you are pushing beyond a stock limit, the other thing is, if you don't, so let's just say the combustion event gets real high. All right. Did you know that you can burn out a coil trying to push a coil too far? You can burn it out, because remember what I said about closing the gap. Well, if that ignition, if all that coil charge has nowhere to go, all right, you get a bad spark plug, an inefficient spark plug. If that coil charge has nowhere to go, you're going to burn that coil out. All that heat has to go somewhere. So that choice to it, yeah, the charge and the field collapse has to go somewhere. The other thing is, a lot of I don't want to say a lot of aftermarket, but a lot of companies do double spark, FL5 coils versus Accord coils. I don't know if the FL5 coils are any different, to be honest with you. I would assume not, being that they are all the same components. Like, literally the only thing that's changed on the FL5 is the inlet, the turbo, and the intake box. Everything else, as far as I understand, is exactly the same. Running 93 with a big turbo. So on a big turbo, I've made, depending on the car, so cams 93, G30, stock head, stock valve, stock head gas, stock head bolt, stock bottom end, I've made 548. All right. So that is on 93. But it was like 32 pounds of boost on a G30 770. But you can make, even on a drop-in turbo on the RV6s, I generally see about 470 to 480. And it's revving the 8 grand. I mean, 7,800, 76, 7,800. Sorry. I don't know why I said 8,000. But that other car revving 8,000. Ruthenium versus iridium plugs. So ruthenium is a newer material. It has a better resistance to heat under basically spark failure. So that's the start of it. So the ruthenium, as a plug gets hot and the material gets hot, it's less conductive. That's another thing with heat rangier spark plugs. If you get too hot, it actually becomes less conductive and just heats up rather than the spark jumping the gap. So ruthenium tolerates a higher heat while still giving you that spark. Also, ruthenium is better at dissipating heat, dissipating it out through the porcelain. So the ruthenium plug dissipates heat better. It conducts better. It conducts better under heat better. And it lasts longer than iridium. So that would be your differences between the two materials. They weigh more than the FK8 and Accord. You have FL5 coils. Oh, on your car you have FL5 coils. Got it. I'd have to see the coil and see the coil part number to figure out if that coil is really anything different. That is an interesting route. That is not the route I took. The coil I have, the secondary winding is different. So there's really, the only way to test them is, well, zap them. What's the best way to calculate properly an E25 blend when mixing your tank? You're going to need an application for that. They make an application called E85 Cal. The symbol, oh, the damn glare. E85 Cal, that green Vaseline symbol. So, junk. So that's what you need. Let me move it to another page. Maybe you see it better. Yeah, if you send me a part number, Andy, that'd be great. Are Andy, are they Hitachi coils? I would assume yes, considering you plug them in. Because, I mean, that would be pretty interesting. If I can get the original Hitachi number. Here's the weird thing. Like the Hitachi coils have like two different part number selections, kind of like NGK plugs. There's two different part number selections. So, and I did find, and this is the interesting thing, back to Kohler spark plugs. I found a Kohler spark plug, but the issue I ran into is it has a threaded tip instead, which is very easy to resolve. I just wish I could find those little tips, a quality supplier. But I am going to have those up on the website, although they are not in a ruthenium. Currently, there is no actual Kohler ruthenium plug that I can properly verify. The HKS plugs, they say a heat range 8 or 9, which you really can't have both. So, but I think maybe they're wording that because the rutheniums tolerate a heat range difference better. And you have no problem, buddy. I really hope that helps you, man, because that will give you, like, if you have so much in your tank. But one tip I can give you is I always try to leave like 1 gallon of room. So if you screw up, you can add some 93 or 91 or add some more ethanol. That'd be interesting to see though, like what the FL5 coils. I'm sure I can get the FL5 coil part number, the original. Let me see. And I'm also curious though, is the actual FL5 their Denso? What? Okay, so all right. Andy, I have to ask you, did you ohm out the first coil? What I mean by that is, did you take a voltmeter and test the resistance to verify that the resistance wasn't lower or significantly lower or higher? Because that can actually affect your spark. Because, or if you have a lower resistance, it's too low, it'll fry the ECU. And obviously it hasn't done that. A lower resistance draws more amperage. So that's something that you kind of need to be aware of. Like, so if you have a set of coils and they have a slightly lower resistance, they're going to draw more power. Now, I'm not saying it's going to fry something right away, but if you have a higher resistance coil, they're going to draw less power. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind. That's why, like, sometimes when it comes down to aftermarket coil makers, they don't take that into account. And what'll happen is the ECU won't be able to provide the actual energy needed for that particular resistance. But it's very interesting that you say that they're Denso coils. Did they plug right in, or did you need an adapter? I mean, obviously they're working. So, but we just kind of don't know to what extent. You know, it doesn't mean that they're not, like, that they're bad. A lot of coil manufacturers. So, I had the opportunity to get an NGK upgraded coil, but it would cost twice as much. And that was the problem, that the coil would cost twice as much for 20, maybe 25% more output. And I really didn't want everybody to have a coil that cost that much more for that amount. I didn't really think that people would want to pay $500 for a set of coils. So I figured with a 10% increase and a factory price range, how can you go wrong? Andy, that's interesting you say denso because the MAF sensor is now a denso. I'd have to see if you could send me a part number on IG, see if I can backtrack that part number to see if they go on another car. I'll be pretty crazy if they are like to an older SI, because I remember those older coils were different brands. How much power can the factory coils handle? So that's a question for how much. It's more along the lines is how much charge can they handle versus output and survive? Like it's so you can make 500 on stock coils, and you can even make more than that. But what I found is around the 500 horsepower range, you have to start closing the gap on the coil. And when you start closing the gap, it's not on the coil, on the plugs, the spark event does go down some. Now, if you close it too much, you will solve your problem for demand on the coil, but you won't have as good of a spark event, and you just won't make as much power. So the factory coils on a stock gap, on a stock motor, start to give up around 500. If you close the gap to 20 thousandths, they'll handle 700. But remember, a tighter gap means a weaker spark because you're working on field collapse. So the first coil is collapsed, and the collapses over to the second coil, and the second coil drives out. That amount of charge you get through that secondary coil, the total output before it actually lets the voltage go is dependent on this gap. So that's part of it. So if you have a better coil, it will jump a bigger gap. So like I said, 500, but when we get into a ported head, it gets to be different because the combustion event is slower. So we use a lot more ignition advance, and that's actually easier on the plug because the slower combustion event and the heat and the behavior of the plug. So I'd say stock gap around 560, 570 stock gap on a ported head, and then they start to kind of give way. What's your go-to parts list to make my car gap the slowest FK and middle higher next summer? That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. I like that. Oh, and I should say the ruthenium plugs, okay? The advantage to those is those kind of make up for a weaker coil. Oh, I'm laughing about the fact that I know it's not a joke. I know it's not a joke. I know you want to gap them. So hide his info? Well, he's hiding any info. Thank you, Andy, man. Totally appreciate it, man. He's got an RV6 turbo with a Honda fuel system. There's nothing to hide. It's simple. Why it's fast? Okay, do my fuel system with an RV6 turbo, but we're going to change some parts on the list. We're going to change to an XDI pump, and we'll change to an XDI pump instead. I believe he has a Mishimoto intercooler, do a Mishimoto inlet, and catless downpipe, and an NVIDIA R400 exhaust. And yeah, that should add another 40 horsepower. We should pull you right past them. HKS, we'll go to a Mishimoto. So that'll definitely make a big difference. Mishimoto intercooler is like the king of drop-in intercoolers. Wow, those are different. Check that out. That is interesting. They are very different. He's trolling? Hold on. Oh, God. I think he's just being a smartass. I know you didn't do 3 of them. He's just being a funny guy. That's interesting, Andy. Thank you. Andy, I actually have a question for you. Is there another part number on the other side? Because the Hitachis have a part number on the side of the coil itself. If there is, that's the number I'm kind of after at that point. So that maybe I can get it without having to pay an arm and a leg at the dealer. And that's interesting, though, that they fit right in. God, I swear I've seen that coil before, man. I'm telling you, I swear I've seen it before. It looks a little lower profile. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Interesting. Wow. Okay. And well, oh. That comes up. Interesting. You know what? I might have a way to backtrack the actual original. I gotta see, man. I might have a way to backtrack some of that and see what that used to fit or what other cars it was applicable to. Interesting. Well, in all serious, what does a ported head run? So, I have a ported head done brand new. So, but that I'm not letting go for anything less than $2,400. That has every trick in the book. Do everything down from blending valve seats to increasing the actual valve opening, blending every single exhaust port properly. So it's got every trick in the book, man. And it's literally everything's been measured and hand done. So, but if you want just like a standard port work, it's good for like, you'll make 600 on 30 over 600 on 30 PSI on the 660 with it. It's like $900 if you send your head in. That means if you send your head in clean. If it's a disaster and I got to clean it, I charge $250 to clean everything. Do I even need an inlet pipe and intake since I'm Mapless tuned? No, you do not need an inlet intake and an inlet pipe since you do not have a MAF. However, due to the design on the turbos, the inlet pipe makes a better transition. That does kind of help. And you do bring in cooler air. Smaller turbos generally don't lend themselves to hot engine bay. I am on a G3900, and it would probably help if I had a way to direct more cool air there. Yeah, I see it, Andy. I see they're not that expensive. That's pretty interesting that they're not that expensive. And I'm very curious as to, you know, Huh. That's weird, man. Search. No matches found. Interesting. Shows up as accurate too. Interesting. Made a bypass valve for the R660. You don't. Okay, so I think the reason that's coming up is because SES blew up like 3 of them, bypass valves, stock ones, and I never broke one. So so here's the problem. When the ECU sees more than 33 pounds of boost, it doesn't like it on certain cars. The most you can stably run is 34 pounds on a factory ECU. So, with that being said, what was happening was more than likely the throttle plate was slapping shut and popping back open, and that forced the ECU was probably either that or the ECU was in a safety mode, and in safety, when it exceeds certain values, you start screwing with things like the mass airflow reading. The ECU mass airflow settings on an air charged car like a FK8, it does not like it when you screw with the mass airflow scaling, like take the curve and just totally alter it to try to compensate for a ton of fuel. The ECU doesn't like it, and it goes and puts up safeties. It will literally shut the throttle plate and open the bypass valve and then reclose them. And what's probably happened is he's probably going some ridiculous boost number he's trying to hit just to make a number to try to prove something. And because it's popping and closing at like, I don't know, 7,000 RPM on 34 pounds, pop, 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 he's blowing them apart. I've had no problems with any cars. So I don't see a reason to change your bypass valve on an R660. I don't think that has anything to do with anything other than people trying to run more boost, because on 32 pounds, 33 pounds, the wastegate's still open because that turbo can flow a lot of air. So I don't think it's anything other than I'm not understanding the limits of an ECU. Same coils as an Integra Type S. That's why it shows up on the accuracy. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't really worry about it, man. Like that bypass valve. The only reason like you can blow them apart is trying to push too much air past them. And that'd be too much boost where the ECU can't handle it. The other thing is that solenoid, I'll bet he bypassed that solenoid. That's what I'm gonna bet. I'm gonna bet that he bypassed the solenoid, and when you do that, the solenoid slowly opens the bypass valve. It doesn't just pow. And the reason I know this is because when I have the bypass valve on the car, and now that I don't have it because I needed that electrical output in the Motec, it vents the boost pressure way faster. Like I'm literally talking like, so instead of hearing, it's literally like, and it's over. So my guess is he probably bypassed the solenoid, and because the car is a recirculation valve, it pops it open too hard and blows it apart. Either that, or he's just overrunning the ECU and not understanding the limitations of an ECU. Now, if you want to change that valve, you can. There's no harm in doing so. So I mentioned the TR3 cam cable. That is to have an eliminated MAF. And the thing is, when you're tuning, because there are two different tables that the ECU is looking for fuel, you're looking for the mass airflow, essentially, and the VE. And when you change the cams, the mass airflow naturally works, but the base VE chart doesn't change, and that's the problem. Like, the settings don't change. And the base VE chart is radically different. The mass airflow reading will be accurate. So now you got this car that's trying to read fuel here and fuel here, or reversed. And when you're in low power, the base VE is here. When you're in high power, the base VE is here, but the MAF is where it's supposed to be. Or the base VE needs to be here. Low power, it needs to be here, but it's really here. And in high power, the base VE needs to be up here, but it's really down here in the car. So the MAF's up here, but then you get this spike when it tries to blend the two tables. And it just goes nuts. So at the end of the day, getting rid of the mass airflow sensor and changing to a mapless tune where I can adjust fuel by boost solves this problem 90+% of the way, where it does not go lean or rich or spike either direction. Do I recommend you buy a coil upgrade with G3770 and 2000cc injectors? Yes. It won't hurt. It'll always do better. Thank you, Andy. Is the bypass valve for Rampage turbo get recirculate or atmosphere? It's atmosphere. And that would be qualified as a blow-off valve at that point. What test can I do to run the turbo to diagnose the turbo is faulty? Car is smoking with a P600. Notice that after I switch to 3-inch exhaust. That's probably just the P600, man. Those things burn out all the time. The only problem is they're replacing it with the P700. And I went over this last week that the P700 makes less power for a lot of reasons. Best intercooler for the FK8. The one that's on my car. And next Wednesday, so you guys know, it's going back to the fabricator. And now that intercooler will become available. Even at 843 wheel horsepower, the temperatures didn't even budge. So the intercooler I have is 1,000. But if you want a best case scenario intercooler to just put on the car, super easy, and an off-the-shelf like component, get a Mishimoto. Otherwise, go to Ultimate Racing is your next step, or the next step after that is the custom one I have. Yeah, I was referring, there wasn't much room left into the fuel system. And I also was referring to, like, there's not really any more room in the ignition timing. I made a very mild adjustment up around 6,000 to 7,000. And then that's where I made some minor adjustment up there that may give you a little bit more. You may not even notice it, but it's definitely a little bit more. An issue with AFR oscillation at watt. Tuner is fearable. Buddy, your Claw 9, wait, is it K bar 9? Or you're going to have to check for a boost leak, and I wouldn't tune with fearable. It's like fearable's an off-the-shelf style map. I don't know what mass airflow sensor you have, but I can't diagnose like stuff like that without actually tuning the car. I don't know. It could be something he's doing. I don't know. Can't answer you that. I can't even say it's a boost leak because there are certain voltage ranges on certain mass airflow housings that fluctuate. And that's just an issue in not necessarily in turbulence, but an issue in the fact that the factory mass airflow sensor doesn't like certain voltage ranges. What's up, Abe? Wait a minute. Full Race discontinued their kit. What? No way. What the hell happened? You sure they didn't just, they were going to do a G30 kit? Hey, Juan, your car shouldn't have rough starts, man. Unless it's the first 20 seconds on a cold start and cams, there's just nothing you could do about that. That's called the cat light off phase. Fucking EPA. It's getting annoying. Just let us do what we want to do. They sit there worrying about us modifying cars, but they don't worry about shit like Dieselgate. Assholes. So, yeah, buddy. So here's another thing. Let's just put this in the math. And I'd like me and one other guy online has done the math before. If you took every car and made it electric, okay? Made every car electric. You know the pollution might change by 0.4%? 0.4. Now then the problem is, where do the people with apartments plug their cars in? Yeah, thank you, Juan. Appreciate it, man. What's your thoughts on the Wagner tuning intercooler? Kit comes in a specific. So I don't know. Like, I have it on one of my customers' car, but I don't have enough data. They like them because for track use because they're lightweight, and they really want lightweight stuff. Do I think a 3.5-inch MAF is good on an Accord? You know, Andy, I don't think that's a bad idea. And the reason I don't think it's a bad idea is because I know you are way up there in the mass airflow frequency. You've got to be up there by like 10,000 or maybe even maxing them out. I've actually seen over 10,000 in the frequency. They do read past 10,000. But I think up in that range, the accuracy is bad. So I think that a guy like you, would benefit from having a bigger mass airflow housing. The 3.5-inch internally is like 18% bigger or something like I forget the math numbers, but it's not a hard change. You might add like 27% to the mass airflow scaling, and you should be fine. The other thing is batteries, man, with these electric cars, man. What do you do with these batteries afterwards? Now you have a toxic landfill that nobody can go near. Could be bent rods. If you had a bent rod, man, you'd know. Knocking noise between 1500 and 2K. I don't know, buddy. I don't know. That could be just valve train noise. You got to understand, like something like that, man, I need to see the car. You know, I really need to see the car. I'm sorry. Like, we could hypothetically guess all day what it could be, but the best thing to do is take it to one person and have that one person keep his eyes on it, look at it. And maybe if that person consults with another technician if you really need to. But bouncing ideas off the forums usually doesn't work. It usually puts you in a circle. Ha! He says I can fit the stock cord map inside the 3.5. Nice. So between summer and winter blend fuels, honestly, guys, oh, so I've gone over this. There is, when it comes down to that, that is up to your tuner to understand the safe limit of a car year round. There is a number generally on pump gas fuels that is just a safe limit. And that should not really be an issue. You shouldn't need a winter or a summer tune. This stuff goes back to the issues of the old days where we didn't have closed loop, where closed loop couldn't adjust the fuel. So now you needed a winter tune and a summer tune. So if your tuner understands that there needs to be a certain amount of range in the fuel system and a certain amount of range in the ignition timing, then you should not have a problem. Do I use the Honda app on my phone? I never did use it. I always used the dash. I had it always on my dashboard originally. You need Honda Hack for that. And I think it's like APK4 or something is the file name. And don't try to just download it to install it. Do your Honda Hack and then install it from your center console. Motec's good, man. I'm happy with it. It was so, because there was so much to look at all at once. It was literally like throwing a dictionary at me at first and saying, figure out where everything's like, when I say figure out everything's at, but know every word in the dictionary. There is a lot of linguistics difference, but I'm comfortable enough to remote tune Motec now without a problem. So your valve cover is not going to cause an oscillation at watt. I'll say that. It's not going to cause a fuel oscillation at watt. Not your valve cover gasket. Blown out PCV, maybe. Boost leak. Wrong voltage range for that particular setup in the mass airflow. Incorrect mass airflow scaling. Well, just go back and look at what Juan said about my tune versus Fearable. You won't be disappointed. The only way you have a big oscillation is if you have a problem, and it depends on how big the oscillation is. Abe, I wish you kept your car. I have so much shit to test. I need a stock motor car to test shit. I'm going back to the dyno Wednesday, but to a different dyno. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen the Prattworks carbon fiber intake. Some of you have, some of you haven't. And it's on Drag Cartel. Now, I am not permitted to tell you what I got it for. However, I will tell you this, for those of you that don't know, I am got one with a port injection coming up. So it will have a port injection plate already attached to it. And I know for those of you who want nothing but top end power, that might not be the right intake manifold for you. However, the longer runners, that's the Prac Works, Prac, P-R-A-C. It's on Drag Cartel. I'll show you what I'm getting. I really don't care what color it is. Got a back and forth conversation. But yeah. So the reason I decided to go that route was the long runner lends itself to mid-range, and a roll race car is a lot of mid-range. You want that mid-range response. So yeah, see, Andy understands that. If you want to accelerate fast, that's what you need. You need mid-range with some good top end, but it needs to be controlled. But the advantage to this is I'm going to come back into that mid-range faster. So the mid-range responsiveness. So they do still say that the top end will add. So we will see. And this is why I'm going to the dyno next Wednesday. I'm going to the dyno next Wednesday to set down some numbers. Probably the last time I'll see my G series, my G30. And so after that, the precision turbo is going on the car. And that will go on the car. And then that will go back to the dyno. And then more than likely what I will do is take the standard intake with the precision and then take that back to the dyno and then put on that Prac-Works. Now, the one thing that I'm going to be at a disadvantage with the Prac-Works is if I want to use methanol, it's going to have to go this way, then around and up and in. That will make it more difficult to run methanol. That is the downside to the Prac-Works. $11.1 to 12.8. It should not be swinging that far. No, and I'm getting rather annoyed about the XDI pumps, man. I know, and I'm so sorry, man. I have had 4 on order. I've gotten 1 out of 4. I can't, you know what? While I'm on the phone, it's like everybody, I've gotten messages from everybody. Hey, do you have them? There's a 3-month wait. I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand what the problem is. So I had a problem with a customer with one of them, and I kind of wonder if it's something that they discovered and they had to stop. It's very frustrating. Axion will tell you they have 2 in stock, but they're like, but it doesn't mean they have them. They're probably already gone. And I believe Key already ordered through me, and I'm a little aggravated because I ordered from 2 suppliers. I ordered from XDI, and I ordered from somewhere else. Wait, what date is that? No, see, the last one they shipped me was freaking March. It's aggravating as hell. Well, Andy, I believe he already ordered from me. So you're sending him somewhere else? It's going to make him cancel my order? I have to go harass. I've tried to harass. So let me put it this way: I order from Full Race, and I order from Extreme DI. And the reason I order from both places is because Full Race often gets preferential treatment. So, in order to do this, to make up for the lack of the ability to get pumps, I order from both. Now I pay less through XDI, but I pay more through Full Race, but I get them sooner. The last pump I ordered was before February. The last 3 pumps. So I've been waiting for pumps all the way back since January, which is really frustrating. Any tips on reducing turbo spool between shifts and watt? That's all tuning, buddy. I don't know, man. I don't really have too much of a problem with spool. RPM range and tuning, and correct turbo selection. How much power can the pump do? 670, 680. Message them about injectors for the Accord. They say, oh, Andy, you know what? I'll send you something. If you're willing to try it, I can't make no guarantee. Where are... I will say a stockish version of these worked. So but those are modified. So, but I can't make you any promises, but I will tell you, they don't like more than 160 bar, 170 bar. So you're gonna have to turn your fuel pressure down. So, but as far as the XDI pump, like that 670, 680 on E50 is about where they can go. Anything beyond that, either the dyno reads high or you're like running some sort of race gas to get past there. That's just the way they are. The XDI pump is kind of like the Accord pump. It just hits this wall no matter what you do, no matter how much RPM you throw at it. It's just plainly not big enough. That's pretty much what it is. And that's also why I'm adding port injection to my car, because it's just not big enough. Now, there is a pump that is bigger than the XDI, Evo 60 they call it, but that pump's one, $2,500, and two, they're not really making it at this time for that. Now, another thing is I don't know if maybe their production is so far behind because they're behind with everybody, or if they're behind because that pump is produced for more than just our car. That pump is produced for a lot of different vehicles. So I'm kind of curious as to what the issue is for the delay. I know that previously in the past, they said to me the delay with the XDI was that they had a shipment in that they get for something to do with the way they manufacture the pumps, and the tolerances weren't right. And so I messaged them. They're like, oh, well, we got our own CNC machine now, and we get it up and running and make our own parts, and then it won't be an issue. And they said they didn't want to send out the pumps for the CNC. And that was a while ago, and they said it got them going. And since then, since that point, I think I've gotten 2 pumps, and then that was it. I didn't get any more after that. So I kind of don't know what's going on. And I kind of like want to, maybe I should just email Flores and be like, hey guys, what's up? I got a commercial account. Have you gotten any pumps in? What's the story? When are they going out? And I also try to tag them in everything, that has an XDI pump on it. Sometimes I forget, which is kind of bad for me to forget. But let me see. Did I tag them in here? If I didn't, oops. No, I did. I tagged them there. So, I don't know. Can't answer you. But I will say I did talk to them and ask them, hey, I'll help you out. You help me out. I shared some Motec data. Like, hey, man, kind of like give me a little here for some pumps. So, we'll see. And also the breaking drilled fuel lines. You break a drill fuel line. You mean break and drill bit in? Yeah, I'm using my XDI pump now. I've had it on the car. I don't take it off. Why would I take my XDI pump off? What's with this thing and people on Motec taking the XDI pump off? I don't get it. Why would you want to get rid of direct injection? Direct injection makes the most power you will never make for the amount of fuel and boost or air fuel and all that stuff. You will always make more power on direct injection. What level of XDI I have on my car? I have the standard XDI pump that everybody else has. I don't have anything special. The only thing I have special is them big ass 2500 cc injectors. Which I'm sure if somebody wanted a set, I could get them a set. But they're kind of overkill. So, I mean, realistically, so here's what I'm doing. I have IDX 1050s. I have 2500 cc direct injectors. And then I have the standard XDI pump. Between that setup, there's no reason that I don't have enough for 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 wheel horsepower worth of fuel. So the issue with the 2500 cc injectors is they are so big that the pump just can't deal with what the injection is. No matter how much I lower the pressure, what happens is I lower the pressure and the duty cycle of the injector goes up and it makes a little less power. So there's a point where that pressure makes a difference, where having a little more fuel pressure gets a bit better spray. And you have the time for the fuel to evaporate and vaporize. Let's say atomize, vaporize. Atomize really isn't the right word, but basically vapor, turn into a vapor. Oh, so for those of you who haven't seen, you've probably seen the new shirts. So check them out, website, 25 bucks. Medium, large, XL, and 2XL. And 2XL cost me a few bucks extra, $3. So check them out on the webpage for those who haven't seen it yet. And I am going to be. So here's what I'm going to do for particular people. But the car sticker's got to stay on the get a free one with a dyno. Yeah, right? No, but I am giving away free t-shirts if you buy the turbo. I have 10% off right now on the R660s. So I only got 2 of them. So how long they'll stay in stock, I can't answer you. But I do have 2 of them. So we will see. Hopefully they blow up. But right now everybody's a little bit slow because, kids are getting out of school and all that stuff. Hold on a second. I was just checking something. Yep. Okay, cool. Well, no, how many people wear 4X? Giving away a free MHI or P700? Who's giving away? That's kind of like Fuzzy saying $50 draw-in for my old G Series Turbo. $50 ticket giveaway. I wonder how long he's going to hold on to that giveaway till he actually gets the money back for the turbo. You put in $50, no one's going to buy that. Little coming intercooler flange. There's a little bit of oil coming. That depends on your oil you're running, how hot the car runs. Do you run catch cans? How many miles are on the motor? I can't answer you on that. You're saying a little bit of oil. I don't know what's a little bit of oil. Why should you buy the XDI pump? Do you need more fuel? Yeah, probably. Just about everyone does. The car can run out of fuel on 93 octane. Who's doing some random giveaway? And org. Wow. Well, that's a shame. You know what, Andy? Damn, man, now that I just thought about it, if I get that other intake, now I don't need the, I have one of those. Shit. I don't know, man. I don't know how he got so many followers, but it is what it is. So I guess that's what happens when you have a team of advertisement people. If you got a team of advertisement people. Yeah, he's talking about a radium port injection plate. All right. Well, there's no reason to just be rude, man. Like, there's really no reason to be rude. If you're rude, just. Hey, FK, dude, I really kind of need. You would have to do your research and understand direct injection and the injection window to understand why these cars do not have a lot of fuel. They have enough fuel for them to be run stock. Very easily overrun the stock fuel system at 400, anywhere from 380 to 430, depending on the fuel. And they will not go past 430 horsepower on stock fuel system, no matter what turbo or setup you throw at it. Oh, wait, hold on. Honestly, Kbar, I don't know, man. It could just be a lot of hot in your area. You say an ounce of oil. An ounce of oil is a lot. If I showed you an ounce of oil, it would cover my whole keyboard when it's spread out. How long ago was that, Andy? Yeah, you'd be surprised, man. Like 1 ounce of oil, that goes a lot of long distance, man. Well, I covered all the information of the coil packs. It's pretty relevant. It says right on there, there's 10% more spark. So it's almost time because I do an hour and a half and it's almost over. Yeah, Juan, you don't have a lot done, but it's still you can make decent power. Just the right bolt-ons. A month. That's a long time. Was he supposed to like send it to you like used or? So Andy, I have one, but I ground the piss out of it. It's all ground out to the port size because the radium plates are actually the size of the stock manifold. And I basically ground mine out to match the manifold. Oh, so coils will not prevent knock. So the one I have is already plumbed for all that. But hmm. No, that's one. That's not how that works. If you no, just because you don't have a key code doesn't mean that the price is cheaper. So if you buy a used XDI pump, generally, as long as you have the serial code from the original box, they'll give you another code. so you can use it if you bought it used from another car. It's an agreement they have with Honda for codes. You can't just go buy an XDI pump and then go buy the code. I can get codes if needs be, but I need to verify. Holy shit. I'm all right, buddy. How about you, man? I had a rough week last week, but I'm doing good, man. Joining in late, man. We're almost shutting down. Well, I don't have one that's like in stock like condition though. So unfortunately, unless you want the one that's all chopped up, I could send that to you if you want. All the holes are in the right place for that. I was talking to RB6 about having a plate made, but right now it's just, hey Andy, what kind of price were you thinking about making, mass producing this, or are you thinking about just making something for yourself? Thanks, man. Appreciate it, man. So the biggest difficulty with the plate is alignment and all that. And the way mine is ground out currently, I don't know how that would be for that. Well, Taylor, so that was a venture that Taylor and I had originally started. And I told him, and every time I got it back, it never lined up right. It never lined up quite right. And I kept ripping the manifold off and putting it on, and ripping it off and putting it on, and ripping it off and putting it on. And man, I remember one time he even drilled the holes in the bottom side. And I told him, don't drill the holes. I will do that. And he drilled them on the wrong side. I'm like, bro, what am I supposed to do here? Man, what a disaster. And it would just, they never fit right. It just never fit right. And one time I was like, bro, you need to move this hole this way, this one, that way. And I'm like, and he's like, because he said he could do all this. And I'm like, okay, cool. We'll just do it. And then he goes, I'll just make the holes bigger. I was like, how does that solve the problem? What are you supposed to do? Float it into place when the manifold's in the way you can't see it? And then that was the last time. And then he just like released them and ghosted me. And I did all the work for that. And he kept telling them like, this, we need to put that and that. And they were like, yeah, I don't know, man. It wasn't great, man. And the problem wouldn't have been that they could have been bored out to the right size. The problem was areas where they sat, it was an overhang. So it just didn't work. So honestly, Andy, I really think what you need more than anything is a cylinder head. And the reason I say this is because you've got to go off the cylinder head. If you want, I can give you the dimensions for plate thickness. That's actually pretty easy. So what I meant by Andy was he was supposed to make the drops. So that's what he was supposed to. He was supposed to make the drawings, and the guy CNC'd it. So that was my understanding, but maybe that wasn't the truth. I never knew. So when I'm ready to down to you, how much for heads up time do you need? I'm in Florida. I like to have at least 2 weeks, Bernard. Yes, Juan, I can do them later. Absolutely. Like 5 p.m. in California. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can work that out, man. So I don't know. I do it. I'm up late anyway, usually. So. But guys, listen, I've got to call it. Honestly, I've still got work to do. So I got to get that work done, and I got to get up early tomorrow. I got to get to FedEx. Yeah, I know, man. Callie's been making everything a nightmare. Look at it this way. They complain about our cars going down drag racing strips, but we go down a quarter mile. How much fuel do we burn? Well, yeah, I know. People are contacting them about making those plates, man, for methanol. So, I think right now the cylinder head I have is already sent to someplace out. So, I'm gonna call it, man. I'll see you guys later. I'll see y'all next week. And well, Bernard, that's a big ass dragster, not your typical car. But they only use like what, 20 gallons in a weekend? Once a month, once a 3 weeks. But well, I don't know if I taught you that much, but I hope to try to just share information where people can have an understanding and really get an idea, concept of what goes into tuning and building a car, and try to understand what it takes. And I'm no Superman either, man. I'm not. I don't know everything. There's plenty of things that I need to learn and grow and move on, like go forward. And that's just like the Motec. I learn some more things every day. So appreciate everybody. Y'all have a great rest of your week and weekend, and I'll see everybody next week.